Khalil Rountree's rise to the UFC isn't just about mastering martial arts. It's a story about overcoming unimaginable odds and psychological battles that shaped him long before he even stepped into octagon. From the tragic loss of his father when he was just 2 years old, to being raised by two older brothers who became his father figures, Khalil's journey is marked by resilience, transformation, and a complex psychological struggle. Be aware, this video will get so even Khalil Rountree himself might not even know about this stuff or might have never thought about it, but be ready to hear some really dark stuff. Today we're going to explore the psychology of Khalil Rountree. We'll look at how his early life experiences may have shaped his identity, motivation, and even his fighting style. We'll unpack Freud's theories about Oedipus complex and the superego, and how these concepts can help us understand Khalil's journey. But first, let's set the stage by looking at the key moment that shaped Khalil's life. Khalil Rountree was born in Los Angeles in 1990. When he was just 2 years old, his father, Khalil Rountree Sr., who was the tour manager for the legendary R&B group Boyz II Men, was murdered in a violent accident. Growing up without a father would profoundly impact anyone, but for Khalil, this was just the beginning of his journey filled with challenges. He was primarily raised by his mother and two older brothers. As Khalil grew up, his brothers filled the void left by his father's death. This is where my dark theories come into play, so listen up. They were the male figures he looked up to, but they also create a unique dynamic that we need to explore. On the Mighty podcast, Khalil reflected how he felt a sense of loss but also found strength in his older brothers.
My father's passing caused, and my mom remaining single after that, it really caused my brothers to grow up quickly. They ended up, although they were still in school and still playing sports, they ended up taking more of the provider role. So they were doing whatever they could to bring food and money home.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So they were still trying to live their teenage lives, but realized we gotta make money.
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean? We gotta do something outside of just going to school and just playing football. So they were always protective over me, but they were figuring it out too. So they didn't really have a lot of experience or advice. They didn't have kids of their own yet, things like that. So it was more just my little brother's protected. My little brother's got, new school clothes. Yep. All right. And then they go about learning what it's like to be a man on their own, So yeah, it was interesting. They took it well. They always told me good things about my dad, taking care of them and stuff. Cause we have different dads.
Okay.
But my dad pretty much adopted them.
Gotcha.
When they were young.
Gotcha.
5.
This brings us to the psychological concepts that we'll discuss. To understand Khalil's psychological journey, let's talk about Sigmund Freud, the famous psychologist who developed some theories about how our childhood experiences shaped who we are as adults. One of Freud's most well-known theories is the Oedipus complex. It sounds complicated, but don't worry, I'm gonna explain it to you as simple as I can. Here's the gist. Freud believed that during a certain stage of childhood, around the ages of 3 to 6, children develop a feeling of desire for the opposite sex parent and jealousy towards the same-sex parents. For boys, this means they might actually feel a rivalry with their father, while wanting to be close with their mother. However, this desire fades as the child grows up and begins to identify with the same-sex parent, modeling their behavior and values on them. This process helps the shape of their identity and the moral compass. If you didn't understand, let me say it more simply. Basically, Freud said when children are at the ages of 3 to 6 years old, if they are boys, they feel attraction to their mother, sexual attraction to their mother. And they see their father as a sexual rival. This is all happening in the state of unconsciousness. So don't think that, oh, I never thought of this when I was 3. Yeah, of course you didn't, because it happened in the state of unconsciousness. And this is also a theory, not a fact. But listen up. This rivalry with their father will shape who they are, because at the same age, the kids will develop a super ego. Now, Khalil didn't have his father to guide him through this process. So what did he look up to for guidance? That brings us to the next concept, which I gave you a glimpse of. Let me tell you this. Freud describes the superego as a moral compass, developed by internalizing the values and rules we learn from our parents and society. If a child's father is absent, they might look up to other male figures for this moral guidance. In Khalil's case, his older brothers likely became his primary role models. They feel that fatherly role influencing his values and sense of self-worth, but there's the catch. This could also create a sense of competition or rivalry between Khalil and his brothers, much deeper than any other kid who are rival with their own brothers. So as Khalil grew, he may have felt the need to prove himself against his brothers, almost like he was trying to surpass them. This brings us to the deeper psychological concept, an idea of killing the father figure. Let's explore this further. What role did Khalil's brothers really play in shaping him? You can dive deeper into this story by watching the Mighty Mouse podcast. It was actually really good, and I really enjoy his podcast. You guys should really check it out. He went deep into his psychology back in the days, how he was overweight, feeling suicidal, feeling depressed, and at the same time, his brothers were always the beacon of how a man should be. They were the providers, by his own word, how a man should be. They were athletic, they were supportive, and at the same time, they were protecting him as if he was a child, as if he was their responsibility. As sweet as this is, and I'm sure there is like zero malicious intent into this is just how a dear brother will react to their younger brother when the father is absent. This idea, this concept will create something deeper. Khalil's brother introduced him to the world of MMA. At first, it was about losing weight and improving himself. But as Khalil trained, he began to realize that this sport could be a way to carve his own identity. They talked about the meaning of life on that podcast. It's a deep concept. They talked about the identity. And Khalil found that in MMA, not necessarily by being an MMA fighter. This was the key point of it. When he started training MMA, he changed his life, and he wasn't even planning on becoming a professional MMA fighter, but the concept of being good at something was the push start for him to realize that as a man he does have a worth. As he honed his skills, MMA transformed from a hobby to a path for self-discovery. In Freudian terms, Khalil brothers were not just role models, they were also rivals in his quest for manhood and self-identity. By excelling in MMA, Khalil was not just becoming a better fighter, he was perhaps unconsciously seeking to overcome the influence of these male figures. I discussed in my Adesanya video how, in my opinion, fighting is the ultimate proof of manhood in the modern day. You guys should watch that out after watching this video. And also give me a like and subscribe if you enjoy my type of content. It will really help me grow my channel. So where were we? Oh yeah, killing their own father.
Freud said, for example, that no one could be a man unless his father had died. And Jung said, yes, but that death can take place symbolically. And that's partly why people are often willing to maintain a tyrant-slave relationship with their father. It's like, on the one hand, you have to be inferior in a relationship like that. You know, you've always got the judge watching you. But on the other hand, there's always someone who knows what to do. There's always someone standing between you and the unknown that you can go ask, what should I do? Well, at some point you'll realize that the reason you can't ask that anymore is because they actually don't know any more than you do. And that's also when you establish a more individual relationship with your parents. It's at that point that you could conceivably start taking care of them instead of...
What does it mean to kill a father figure? In Freud's theory, this isn't about actual violence. It represents overcoming the influence of dominant male figures to establish one's identity. So when Khalil pushed himself to excel in MMA, it may have been more than just sibling rivalry. It could have been unconscious psychological process at play. He was proving to his brothers that he is finally man enough to face them. He is better than them. He is more manly than him. He is finally the one who can provide. He is finally the one who is the father, which this goes into a very deep concept, which is the Hegelian master-slave dialectics. If you guys want me to explain that in a future video, let me know in the comments. Let's tie it all together. Could MMA have been Khalil's way of reclaiming his manhood? Could it have been his way of symbolically killing his father figure? As mentioned earlier, MMA was introduced by him by his brother, who could be seen as a stand-in for the father he never had. By excelling in the sport and eventually surpassing his brother, Khalil may have symbolically asserted in his independence and autonomy. This was his way of stepping out of the shadow of his father's absence and his brother's influence. In the octagon, Khalil fights with a level of intensity and aggression that suggests more than just a desire to win. It's a very, very personal battle if you guys look at how he fights. It's through every punch, every kick, every step. Everything is towards reclaiming something that he lost early in his life. His sense of manhood, his identity, his power. In many ways, Khalil's MMA career could be viewed as his journey towards psychological wholeness. By conquering the sport, he may have symbolically conquered the father figure he never knew. But that unconsciously influenced his development for years. In the end, Khalil Rountree's story is about much more than MMA. It's about navigating life's tragedies and finding strength in unexpected places. Through his journey, we can see how deeply psychology can shape our motivation and decisions, often without us even realizing it. That's the beauty of state of unconsciousness. For Khalil, every fight is not physical. It's psychological. It's about confronting the unresolved parts of his past, reclaiming his manhood, establishing himself not just as a fighter, but as his own man. And you guys might say, yeah, this is too much of a stretch to point everything to his father's death. But I'm not the one doing this. It's actually him saying this. In every interview that I saw from him, in every post-fight, pre-fight, everything, he always mentions that his father's passing had a great effect on him. And this was actually interesting to me because he said that when his father passed away, he was only 2 years old. So how could a 2-year-old be so affected? Like, he didn't know his father that deeply. Why was it so affecting him? So this is why I think it brings conviction to my point, to my theory. So the next time you watch Khalil step into octagon, think about what's really at play. It's not just a fight, it's a culmination of a lifelong psychological journey. Thank you for watching. What do you guys think about Khalil's story? Do you guys believe psychological factors play a major role in fighting success? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until the next video, goodbye.